Why am I not good enough? If you're like me, you've probably asked yourself this question a lot of times. To the point where I've literally just Googled, why am I not good enough? Why do I not feel good enough? It's something I deal with. It's something that I think that people probably deal with on a pretty common basis as well. We all have like this kind of imposter syndrome almost, or just a self-consciousness of why don't I feel good enough? And it's not always a horrible thing, but a lot of the times it can be, right? So it's really not good for our self-esteem. It's not good for our self-image. It's kind of toxic or poisonous because a lot of the times when we don't feel good enough, we try and bring other people down to that level as well instead of raising ourselves up. So it can be pretty bad for sure. But there are some ways, I guess, you could probably use it to your advantage, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The first thing I kind of wanted to talk about or discover is kind of like why we feel these ways in the first place. And I don't study these things in school. I'm not a doctor or a medical expert by any means. I'm just a curious guy. And so like kind of my idea of like why we might feel this in the first place is it was probably adapted as like a survival instinct or like an evolutionary thing. The idea or notion that essentially you'd kind of have these internal conversations going on in your head to keep you socially bound to your tribe or the group of people that you're with or whatever it is. And so the fear of kind of being excluded and being cut off of social resources, like, you know, when humans were living in caves and stuff like that, right? Small tribes of, 20 to 50 people. Someone else will correct me on this, but you know what I mean, right? And so it was kind of, in my opinion, probably adapted for that reason, to kind of keep us in the social queue, to make sure that, you know, people continue to like us and we add value to the group. And for that purpose or for that reason, people will continue to give us resources, and it kind of works as like a give and take type of thing, right? Like you add value so you can also get some resources. But then the fear would be that you don't add enough value to get the resources that you need to survive. And so that's probably where it stems from. This can kind of be like your ego speaking to you, saying, hey, you're not really good enough yet. You don't really have enough to give to people. And so you might need to add something to yourself to make yourself better, whether that's like a skill or more money or more friends, whatever it may be. It's kind of an internal conversation with yourself and your ego, basically just telling you that you're not enough, you don't have enough to give to other people, and you need to probably add to yourself to make yourself better, which is a little bit outdated, I think, for us as humans, because we don't live in the same society where we need to kind of go to one guy who does all the hunting and he's going to provide us with our food, and one person who does all the gathering of supplies, so I could probably go over and grab some fruit off of him. We're in a society today where you can go to Walmart and Amazon or a grocery store, and people are a lot more open to cooperating with one another as well. It's a different world, and so we don't really need to have these types of thoughts any longer, I think. There is some use for them, and we're going to kind of talk about that, like I said. But I wanted to kind of also talk about like why people feel it in today's society. And so to start it off, there's a famous quote by Teddy Roosevelt: comparison is the thief of joy. Where do most people get their kind of comparisons from? Before it was mainly like TV and radio. Now it's mainly social media, right? So we're always comparing ourselves. Maybe you're a guy and you're comparing your body image to another guy. Maybe you're comparing someone else to your partner or your friends. Maybe you're thinking like, hey, my friends don't do that for me, or I don't do that for my friends. I must not be a good friend. And on social media, we're always kind of comparing ourselves to people. Now, there's two things in here that I want to talk about. The first one being, nobody really posts real stuff online. We all know it. If you post anything online, on Instagram, the pictures, you don't just take one picture, you take 100 pictures and you pick the best one. Once you narrow it down to the best one, then you start to edit it. Maybe you throw a filter on, I don't know how people get their Instagram photos so good, but it's not real. It's not an actual representation of reality. So it's kind of crazy to actually just like start to compare yourself to that. So that's the first one, is don't compare someone else's fake reality to what you have going on, and especially not like the worst aspects of what you have going on. If you're down bad right now and you're kind of maybe hurting for cash, or you don't have the funds that you want, don't start looking at people's brand new cars and stuff like that, because they probably A, can't even afford the payments on it, or B, it's not even their car, they just rent it, right? So it's not a real reality you're comparing like your own flaws to, so you're not even leveling the playing field at all. It's not even a fair game for you. The second thing is, I don't know who said this quote or where I heard it, but someone will find it probably. It's really common, but basically, I was in the gym the other day and one of my buddies was teasing another one of my buddies for how much he could lift. And they asked me what my opinion was. And I said, well, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, right? So to kind of look at someone who's been doing something for a long period of time when you're first starting off, and be like, hey, I'm never gonna be that strong, or I'm never gonna be that fast, or I won't even be able to do this, let alone as well as them. It just doesn't even make sense. Like, you're just starting off and you're gonna compare yourself to the Michael Jordans of this world. Like, how about let's just try starting and then practicing, and then once you've been doing it for maybe 25 years, then you can kind of look at like why you're not excelling as fast as you want to, or as well as you want to. So essentially what you want to remember is, don't compare your reality to someone else's fake reality, and don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Two similar concepts, but they are a little bit different. The last thing that I'll kind of chat about is what to do when you do have these emotions, and how you can start to use them for your benefit. So when you get stuck in these negative thought patterns, for me especially, you can kind of get into an anxious state of mind, or an unproductive state of mind to say the least, where you're kind of just running through negative emotions over and over again, right? So when you just have like a negative, maybe an event playing in your head over and over again, when you have maybe, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or next time I could say this differently, weird problems that just kind of repeat in your head that are telling yourself like you're not really good enough, you kind of gotta first get into a good state of mind. So how do you do that? A lot of people will suggest meditation, but if you're anything like me, sitting alone in the silence is just going to lead to more thoughts that are really not too great. So what you want to do is kind of ground yourself. So what I try and do is focus the best I can on my breathing, and then as many senses as I can do as well. So like what I'm talking about is like your sight, your hearing, your touch, your smell, your taste, and your breathing, obviously. So what that looks like basically is I'll try and focus on my breath a little bit, just to be a bit more aware of what's going on. The next thing I try and do is I try and get in touch with as many of my senses as I possibly can. You'll see, like, when I get anxious, I'll rub my hands together so I can feel like the touch. I'll try and actually pay attention to the smells around me, maybe what I'm looking at, what I see. I'll try and pay attention to what I'm hearing. These types of things help me out with getting a bit more grounded and a little bit more self-aware, and just kind of let me lower those emotions that are kind of hindering me from thinking clearly. So that's a technique I use because I'm not very good at meditation, but if you're a spiritual yogi and you're great at meditation, I suggest doing that. It's probably better than what I've got going on, but that's just something I suggest for people that are similar to me that maybe struggle with meditation. But the last thing you want to do is start to think about like why you're thinking these thoughts. And so where do you not feel good enough in your life? Is it your work? Is it your relationships? Is it your friends? Is it maybe your family, or just your self-image? And start to listen to these thoughts and understand, it's not that you're not good enough. You just don't feel good enough. And you got to kind of start to think like, well, what could make you feel good enough, right? Maybe it's work. Maybe you're not making enough money. Well, do you need to make more money? If so, is that possible at your job? If it's not possible and you know you need to make more money, then you're no doubt gonna feel not good enough. Like, you're gonna feel anxious. That's reality. Listening to these emotions and these thoughts can benefit you because it's gonna let you know what you're actually anxious about if you can think about it from a clear state of mind. If you can't get into a clear state of mind, these thoughts are gonna just haunt you, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck. So getting yourself into a mind state where you can actually evaluate your thoughts and listen to it, have a conversation with yourself and start to feel like, okay, why am I starting to feel this way? So when you can kind of start to understand like why you're feeling a certain way or why you get these types of emotions in the first place, then you can start to understand like where you need to make adjustments in your life. Again, maybe it's body image. Maybe like me, I've looked in the mirror tons of times and said, you know, I'm not really happy with what's going on here. Sometimes I want to be bigger and more muscular, and sometimes I want to lean down and not feel like chubby or husky. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be something maybe that's making you uncomfortable about yourself. And if you can kind of take a look at it from like a third person point of view or a more grounded perspective, then you can kind of start to understand where the adjustments in your life need to take place. Nothing is more demotivating than working really hard at trying to change something that, you know, can't be fixed or isn't even the right thing to fix. So try not to waste your energy on doing things like that. Try and understand like where the adjustments need to be made and how can you start making adjustments on those things as soon as possible and as easy as possible, so you can kind of get the ball rolling consistently and start working on the aspects of your life that do make you anxious or make you feel like you're not really good enough. Now, I really hope this helps you guys out with either figuring out why you don't feel good enough or starting to crack down on the little things that make you feel that way in the first place. And spread the love and positivity. That's pretty much all I have to say right now. If you guys do have a topic that you want me to talk about or even ask people about as well, let me know in the comments section or just message me directly. A lot of people have been already. That way I can kind of address the topics that you want to hear about, or maybe I don't even have an answer and I can go out and find it for you. At the end of the day, we're all in this journey together. I'm still struggling with my problems and I'm looking to solve them. And again, that's kind of the point of this whole thing. So let's go out and crush this weekend. It's Friday today, and let's go enjoy it and have some fun.